This is my second car. I don't drive it every day, yet over the last 2 years I've still managed to rack up over 20,000 miles. I've taken it on 11 track days. In fact, it's been to most race circuits in the UK. I've tried driving it sideways, I've tried driving it in circles, all legally of course, at drift limits. I've driven it all over Great Britain, and I've been to Scotland twice, where I did most of the North Coast 500. And this year, for my latest adventure, I did a 2,600 mile road trip around Europe, including 7 countries. It even got up to 140 miles per hour on the German Autobahn, only briefly though. I don't really recommend going that fast in this car. At that speed, it all gets a bit noisy and a bit rattly. But over all that time, what do I like? What don't I like? What should you look out for? And what's gone wrong? I haven't cleaned the car for the review. It's not particularly dirty, but it's not really very clean either. This is how it looks on average, to be fair to you, although I do clean it most weeks. However, at the moment, I'm battling with leaves. Where I park it in this car park happens to be where all the leaves go. You literally get tornadoes of leaves flying around it, and it just dumps all over the car. And I have to keep a cover on the roof of the car because the neighbour's cats damaged the roof of my last convertible. I don't like having a cover because it means I'm less inclined to use the car when it's raining. Try taking a soaking wet cover off the top of your car without getting wet. And where do you put it? It's not pleasant. Also, the cover isn't very good. It only seems to last around about 10 months. It shrinks, it cracks, it leaks, and it scratches these shiny black plastic covers around the windscreen. I'm not too bothered about that though, because they're not very expensive to replace, and that's something I like about this car. The parts aren't very expensive, and I could get them painted if I wanted to. I'm going to try the genuine Mazda cover next time, but given my experience of car covers, I'm not hopeful. If you want a convertible, the best place to put it, if you want to look after your roof, is the garage. And I don't have one of those. Now I want to go over what I've had done under warranty since having this car. The first thing is this wheel. The lacquer started peeling off it. I took it to the dealership, they replaced it fuss free. Then these window scrapers were replaced because when wet, when the window goes up and down, it makes an almighty screeching sound. However, it still does that. They're the same window scrapers. Replacing them only solves the issue for a short period of time. But during replacement, a little chip happened just there, unfortunately. Don't know if you can see it on camera, just where my finger is, just there, tiny little chip. Now the dealership actually offered to replace this whole door card because of that chip. And I asked them not to because it's very minor. The whole door card was like £500, I think they said, and I can't bring myself to get anyone, even a business, to pay that much for such a minor issue. This car's going to get marks. It's part of using it. I don't want to be afraid of it. Another thing that I had done was these rollover hoops were moved forward a couple of millimeters because the roof fouls the plastic here and scratches the plastic when you lower the roof. So if I push it down now, that would scratch there, but now there's actually a gap between the roof and the rollover hoop, and they do that by moving them a few mil forwards by putting some spacers down there. I'm not sure what they do, but it does require spacers. I was actually getting away with it. I was aware of the issue by pushing the back down first like this and then pushing the front, and that would make the gap. But when the mechanic drove the car, they didn't do that, and they caused a little scratch here, and I mentioned it to them, and they actually replaced these and did the warranty work. I even said to them, don't worry about replacing those rollover hoops. It's a very minor scratch, but they wanted to do it anyway, so I let them do it, all under warranty. Now, some more things. These are things I haven't had done, but things that may happen to you that are quite common. You get rust down here. This one doesn't have it, probably because of the cover does keep it drier. And the uprights, the hub carriers, have a spherical bearing here. And I don't know if you can see it, there's one at the bottom as well. There's a few spherical bearings. and they fail and can start to knock. And you have to get the whole upright, which is like £500. However, there is someone on the Facebook group, MX5 ND UK, who can replace those spherical bearings without having to replace the whole unit, so they can do it a lot cheaper. It's worth checking out. You can see there's rust here on the disc. That's my fault. At Castle Combe, I left the handbrake on for a couple of laps and smoke started coming out of the wheel, and I've obviously warmed this part of the disc more than here. So when I've put my road pads back in, the road pads aren't contacting here. So I'm gonna have to replace those discs. Not so bothered. I'm already on my second set. They're quite cheap. Usually switching between road and track pads can cause problems to discs, but I've had no problems other than this time when I left the handbrake on. If you look at the front, I switch between road and track pads every single track day, and the front disc is fine. It's making clean contact, as are all of the other discs. Something else to be wary of as well is the screen. I believe this is the same as the Mazda 2 screen. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think it is. That can delaminate, but it's not happening to mine. Mine's been okay. A problem I've not been able to resolve is a rattling airbag in the seat. This airbag here rattles on hot days when nobody is sitting here. I know it's this because if I grab it, it stops rattling. When I took it to the dealership, it didn't rattle, so there's nothing they can do. I'm not sure what to do about it, but this is what it sounds like. I'm now going to show you how the interior has worn over the last 20,000 miles, and I'm very impressed. The thing that stands out are the bum marks in the seat. You've got some creases in the seat, which is normal, and some wrinkles in the bum marks. But this happened within a couple of weeks of ownership, and it hasn't been getting any worse. But the seat still looks fresh other than that. And there's no wear around here where you normally get it. Some people put foam under the seat there to stop that happening. But to me, bum marks means comfort, so I'm not too bothered by that. Overall though, the interior has worn well. There's no scuffs. It all looks good and clean still. The only imperfections are here, as I showed you earlier, just under the door handle. There's a little speck there, and a zip on the pocket of one of my trousers. Did that when I was getting in. And my fingernails, which do get quite strong when they get longer, so I do have to try and clip them, scratch the steering wheel just about there. I don't know if you can see that. The leather on the steering wheel does feel weak. It does feel like you can easily damage that. And the gear knob does turn now, which I don't like. I'm going to try and stop that from happening because, well, I like this to be the correct way around. It really bothers me if it's a little bit off like that when I get in. Maybe some thread locker can sort that out. I'm not sure how that's put on, so I have to look into that. But I'm very impressed. It still looks fresh and new after 2 years and 20,000 miles of relatively hard use. I do look after it, but I do use it quite hard. Something I absolutely love about this car are these headlights. They're the adaptive headlights that allow you to see around objects. So if there's an oncoming car, it dims the oncoming car but shines up the road and shines into the bushes so that you can see animals that are about to jump in front of you. I am used to these headlights at night time now. When I drive a car without them, I do miss them. Many people complain that the paint on these cars is thin and stone chips happen easily, and I have to agree. I have some after 20,000 miles. There's one there and you can barely feel it, the paint is so thin. Another one here, 3 here. Most of them do happen on the road, not after track days, and I do follow people at a respectable distance. I don't normally get many stone chips. This car is more susceptible to them than other cars I've had. This one was after Scotland. See that there? The rest of this is dirt. And this one happened after a track day. It's like a double chip there. You remove this to go on track and put your tow eye in. So I remember that not being there. When I went to put it back in after the track day, I noticed the double chip. It also has a paint defect from factory just here. I didn't notice that. My other half noticed that when it was in the showroom. And another chip there. There's not too many chips, but as I say, I don't usually suffer from them because I do follow people at a reasonable distance, but this car is definitely more susceptible to them than other cars that I'm used to. Unfortunately, like many MX-5s of yesteryear, this car also suffers from rust, and I think when it's 15-20 years old, it's going to be a problem. I can already see some orange appearing in the chassis underneath, the monocoque, and the powder coated black components underneath, like the subframe and the suspension parts, the multi-link rear suspension and the drive shafts, are already going quite orange. My Leon, which is 8 years and 9 months old and has done over 190,000 miles, all miles I've done in all conditions on salted roads, I think it looks better than this underneath already. It's not bad yet, but I can see it being bad in a few years. You can pay for some rust protection, but it's expensive. Expect to pay between £500 and £1,000 to have it properly done. I haven't had it done because, well, I don't know how long I'll keep the car for, and some people say rust protection actually causes more harm than good. So I don't know who to believe. I don't have any experience in that department. I would like to get my Mazda on a ramp in the air next to my Seat Leon to compare how they look underneath, given the difference in age and mileage. This car has about 1/10 of the miles of my Seat Leon, and I don't really drive it in the wet often because getting the roof cover off when it's raining isn't desirable. Yet I drive my Seat Leon near enough every day, come rain, shine or snow. And there is salt on the road for a significant proportion of the year in the UK. It's a shame Mazda have not sorted this well-known issue. It may not affect new sales, but it does affect the legacy of the car. And part of the Mazda's legacy is they took something the British used to do, the sports car, and they made it work better. They made it reliable. Now they need to stop it from rusting. Selecting first gear is difficult. It doesn't want to go in first time. You have to sort of push it once and push it again when you're at a standstill. When you're rolling at a low speed, it's fine. But if you come to a complete stop and try and get first, it doesn't go in. It wasn't like that from new. I can't quite remember when it started doing that, probably around 10-12,000 mile mark. I replaced the gearbox oil and the diff oil. Obviously the diff oil isn't related, but I did it anyway, and that didn't make any difference at all. And even when the gearbox is up to temperature, it's still like it. However, lately it has been a bit better. So I'm not sure what's going on. I replaced the gearbox oil quite a while ago now, so I don't think it's that. Maybe it's just wearing in, but it wasn't like it when it was new. Should we call it character? You're probably not that interested in my opinion of how this car looks, because my opinion doesn't count. Your opinion counts in this department, but I want to say this. When I first got the car, I wasn't completely sold on the looks. I like the front end, but the back, well, it just looked a bit too squished, and this bit of the bumper seemed to stick out too far. I actually preferred the look of the Fiat 124 from the rear, but having owned the car for a couple of years and having cleaned it most weeks, it has grown on me. I do like it now. And even my other half often comments when we're walking towards the car about how pretty it is. And she rarely comments about cars. A minor niggle of the car is this button here, because that's how you open the boot and you get your finger dirty whenever you do it. But also, it's the dirt around the boot. It's always so bad, even though I clean it regularly, and it just looks a mess. Doesn't look so bad at the moment, and the camera seems to make it look a little bit better. I'm really happy with the boot though. You can put 2 carry-on cases in there and still fit plenty around the side, because this square here is the carry-on case, but you can fit other things around the side and behind it. So I'm impressed with that. However, although this is a minor fault, I just hate cleaning around it, it's just awkward. The front makes up for it, because the rubber seals around the front bonnet here, it's got rubber seals there, up here and here, keep the engine bay squeaky clean. This is 2 years and it's still looking good. I have wiped some bits of it, these plastic bits, but not much. And of course, what I really like seeing is that engine behind the struts, the front mid-engined sports car that the Mazda MX5 is. Or at least it is now. I think the earlier ones weren't, but the later generation models are mid-engined. Something more Mazda MX-5 owners should do is clean their exhaust tips. They are actually chromed, but so often they just look dirty and corroded. It doesn't take me long to do it, and I haven't actually done these for a couple of months. I just use this stuff, Autosol metal polish. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested, but it takes about 5 minutes. I put it on a microfiber cloth, rub it on, buff it off, and there we go, shiny tips. I think I should warn you about the windscreen. I got a chip somewhere around here. I can't really see it because it's been repaired so well. But when I was quoted to replace the windscreen, it was about £1,300. And that's because it has a camera up here apparently, and that makes it more expensive. And I don't think they're lying, because my friend has a BMW and he had the same dilemma, except he had to actually have his replaced because he couldn't have his repaired. I know you have insurance for these things, but it's better not to add a claim to your insurance if you don't need to. So I've usually, if I've had a problem with a windscreen, just paid for it myself. Luckily, it only cost me £50 to repair this, so I didn't have to worry about making the choice of paying for it myself or going through the insurance. What I do like about this car, these quarter lights and where the wing mirror is located. You do actually have good visibility around you. This is quite close to your face, so you don't want it to be very big, and it's not too big. I never have a problem seeing where I want to go when I'm going forwards in this car. Reversing, that's a different issue, but I do have a handy reversing camera. And I also want to show you this. I got this off the internet. It's a mobile phone holder, some sort of magnetic thing, and you stick it down. I think it's designed that you put it on the dashboard and you put your mobile phone like that. But my phone has wireless charging, so there's some metal here which is magnetic, and that's magnetic. And the problem I had was putting my phone here. It was always moving around and it was damaging the cable, and I had to put some sort of helicopter tape here to stop it damaging this plastic. But putting this little thing in there, if I can find a link to one, I'll leave it in the description, has solved my issue. I just put my phone in like that, then I get this, plug it in, and it doesn't move. Not on track days, and not when I've been trying to drive the car sideways at drift limits. I guess I should get it on the road and give you my opinion on how it drives. As for seat comfort, I am comfortable. When I first got the car, I struggled because I was trying to have the seat too far tilted forwards like I'm used to, but the hammock style seat, and when I say hammock, there's no padding back here, it's just the tension of the leather that supports you. But this hammock style seat doesn't work if you're upright at all. You actually need it to be back, so then it starts to support your lower back, so actually get some lumbar. There's enough leg room for me. I'm 5'10". I am longer in the torso than I am in the leg, but a comfortable seating position for me actually requires the seat to be, well, as far back as it can go. It can go back further, but because I have the backrest tilted back, it's up against the rear of the car, so I'm not going to be able to go back any further or tilt this back any further. I have a neighbour who is well over 6 foot. I can't remember how tall he is. I think he's 6'3", and he can't even get in the car. The distance between the seat and the steering wheel isn't enough, and he just ends up like this. And there is less room on the passenger side. I noticed that when I was in the passenger side for the first time since I had the car, and my legs were quite high. So more leg room on the right, less on the left. If you're 6 foot or taller, test this car before you buy one. Make sure you can get comfortable. But for me, well, actually fits me like a glove. I have fitted Michelin PS4 tyres to the car. From factory, it came with Bridgestone S001s. They were good in the dry, but not so good in the wet, and a little bit scary in the wet on track. I was a little bit worried that when I switched over to the Michelin, the car would lose some of its character. It wouldn't be as playful, it would be too sure-footed. But that is not the case. The Michelins are still playful. I can get the car to lose traction, but when it does so more progressively and in a more predictive way. However, I am yet to try these Michelins on a wet track day, so I can't comment how they are in the wet on track, but on road, in the wet and the dry, they're superb and definitely worth the money. I spent about £500 for a full set and that includes fitting. As for brakes, I'm using the standard Mazda pad on the road. I think Mazda have got brake pads right at the moment for the road. Nice firm pedal from the top. If you want to brake hard, you have to press the pedal hard. They're not oversensitive like many other manufacturers. On the track, I've been using Ferodo DS2500. They're quite good, but I do want better. The first set lasted me 6 track days, although 2 of those were evenings. And they're about £300 for a full set, or about £350 now. I believe the price has gone up a little bit. I switched to some Rodison pads, and they weren't as good, but they only cost £200, so it's quite a bit of a saving. And if you don't do too many track days, it's quite a good option, although they only lasted me 2 days, albeit they were quite heavy days. I'm back on the Ferodo DS2500s at the moment, but I've discovered this brake pad called a Winmax W4. I want to give that a go. It's £450 for the set, but they fit this car and they look like they might be better, although they have got mixed reviews. So I guess I might have to be my own guinea pig and find out if they're any good. But what about the driving experience? Well, I love how this engine revs. It just tells me that it wants the revs to be right up at the top all the time. I feel like I can have this car near its red line all day and it just won't care. Whereas my Seat Leon, it will rev to over 6,000 RPM, but it feels like it never wants to be more than about 4. It's not that it doesn't produce power there, it's just how it feels. This car rewards me when I rev it. However, what it doesn't do is shoot me up the road when I put my foot down in a high gear. You have to work for your supper. You have to get that RPM needle in front of you, the big rev gauge, right up there, and then it sings and it pulls. I think this car would appeal to a broader audience if it had more low down torque. It's something the car lacks. I'll give you a demonstration. I'm going to slow down now to about 40 miles an hour. I'm in 6th gear and I'm going to put my foot hard on the gas. 40, 45, 50, 55. It's not that it's not capable, that's perfectly usable. And if I wanted to go fast, I could. I'll show you what I could do. Down to 40 now, I want to go fast. I'm a driving enthusiast though, so I don't just put my foot down, I go into 2nd gear and go, woohoo, now we're going 50, and now we're going 60 miles an hour. But in my experience, many motorists don't drive like that. They just like to put their foot down, and if the car picks up and goes, they think it's a fast car and they're happy with it. So if this car could do both, if it could have the happy, revvy nature of the engine and the manual gearbox, but have low down torque without going to turbocharging, I think it could do well, and that's where some hybrid assistance could come in. You could keep the manual gearbox, keep the rev happy nature of the engine, but have a motor on the engine, a small battery, and then maybe you could get an extra 100 Newton meters of torque at a low RPM, and the car would suddenly feel a lot more responsive and a lot faster to more people. But I understand the problem. Such a hybrid system would probably increase the weight by quite a bit, but it would improve efficiency. The engine could charge the battery when it's not doing much, when the engine is in an inefficient state. It could be put under more load, so it's more efficient to charge the battery. So you've got a boost when you want to go fast, but you've also got a helping hand when you're just accelerating and the engine wants to be more economical. However, for me, this car fulfills my driving desires. Sure, I would like more low down torque. I enjoy the push of a turbo engine or an electric car. But I don't really need it. I can work the gears. What I need to do is drive the car more often. I can often go a week without driving it because I'm busy. And then I start to forget why I have the car. But then I drive it again, and then I remember. I just need to drive it more often. Going a week is not really acceptable. It's so easy to rev match when the revs are high. It is more difficult when the revs are low. But look, I'm going to slow down to spin now, and perfect. Just like that. And then the power's there, ready to take you. Slow down again. There we go again. And then accelerate again. I am not going very fast. And that's why I enjoy this car so much. I don't need to drive like a hooligan to enjoy it. I can drive it at normal speeds. I am driving within the speed limit. What I am doing is I'm accelerating and braking more harshly than normal. That's really what I'm doing. But I'm not going faster than I'm legally allowed to. I'm respecting people in these 30 limits and being quiet. And I'm being safe. Another thing to consider is the width of the car. This is not a very wide car, and that's useful because some of these roads aren't very wide. And I've just had a couple of cars actually come towards me taking up their fair share of the road. In fact, they were taking up some of my share as well. But because I'm in a smaller car, it's not a problem. This car fits and suits these roads. Now, even though I'm not driving with economy in mind at the moment, I'm still getting 31.4 miles to the gallon. That's pretty good. Even on track, I get in the teens. The lowest I've had is 14.5, but it's usually over 16, even 18 miles to the gallon on track. And with fuel prices as they are right now, well, a bit of economy is appreciated. And when I'm driving gently like I am now, because I'm stuck behind this truck up there, I can easily get in the 40s to the gallon. Sometimes I might even get 50 miles to the gallon when I'm driving like this. On a long run, going across country on motorways, 48 to 50 miles per gallon is normal. Now I am talking about the miles per gallon we use in the UK. It's different in the US. In the US you have a smaller gallon, it's 3.78 litres, but the gallon we use here is 4.54 litres. I've heard many complaints about the sound of this engine, but I actually like it. It's raspy. It reminds me of the S54 engine in the BMW. I used to have a BMW Z4M with that engine. It's just 4 cylinders instead of 6, but it has a real rasp to it. Let me show you. Let's get going. And I don't think that sounds bad. It's not really loud, but I don't really want it to be loud. I just want to hear it. It's loud enough. And the sound you get when you rev match, that's nice too. This is through and through a road car for me. I have done 11 track days, which is quite a bit in a 2-year period. It's not cheap doing track days. Each one costs me between £400 and £600, and this is not an expensive car to use on track. It's quite economical. The brakes and tyres aren't that expensive. But it is a road car. It's primarily for the road. Over 90% of the miles I do in it are on the road. And that is what I enjoy about it. I can enjoy it on the road. I can enjoy it driving to the track. I can enjoy it driving around the track. And then I can enjoy it driving home and driving in the mountains in Scotland and Wales. So I don't want to modify it. I don't want to change it. I don't want to make it better on track at the expense of its road manners. Not for me at least. This car for me is primarily a fun road car that I can take on track days every so often. If you're interested in the price of this car, well, I bought it new and it was around about £30,000 in October 2020. But I did get a 0% finance deal and I think it had some dealer contribution towards it. But what I'm paying is £4,000 down and £375 per month for 37 months with a final payment at the end of £11,500-ish if I want to keep it. I can't exactly remember the final payment. I'll definitely pay that payment though, for a couple of reasons. The car's still going to be worth around about £20,000 then, but also nothing else new that's coming out seems to be interesting me. Maybe the next MX5, but I think this one's going to be on sale for a while yet. This gear stick is an absolute joy to use. Despite not being able to get it into first gear sometimes at a standstill, it's short, it's precise. Even my other half, who hates driving manual, she likes this gear stick. And if you're wondering why it moves around so much, sort of bobs up and down and goes all over the place, many people comment on that. That's because it's directly connected to the gearbox. The gearbox is here. That's one of the reasons why the car has such good balance. The mass of it's in the middle. There's no cables going to the gearbox. So yes, it does move. The gas, very responsive, more responsive than I'm used to. I've already mentioned the brakes and how much I like the brakes. That's not just the MX5 though. That's all Mazdas. They really do nail the brake pedal feel. The clutch is light and easy to use. The steering, however, it is good on these kinds of roads or when you're cruising a long distance. It's not so good when you're maneuvering though, because it doesn't self-straighten as quickly as I'm used to. So I do find myself trying to help it out to straighten a bit more quickly. And usually I do self-straighten the car myself, but when I've got a lot of lock on, I like it to give me more help than this one gives me. I have to push it myself a bit more than I'm used to. I feel I can't do a video on the MX5 without mentioning just how good the heater is. I can drive around in the depths of a UK winter with the roof off in comfort. I do have a bit of a problem though. During this drive, I have noticed a slight knocking coming from the back. It's more of a loud click when I go over a bump or I accelerate hard. So maybe the spherical bearing in my hub carrier is on the way out. I probably jinxed it when I mentioned it earlier. Further investigation is required. If you have found this video informative, my 2 years and 20,000 miles with the MX5, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.